Hello, my name's Jane Slavin, and this is a podcast of spurious morality.
Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnston and with me this week I have Connor.
Hello.
And we're joined by a guest. We haven't had a guest for a while, so we thought we'd get an absolutely brilliant one. We have Jane Slavin with us.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
So we have got a series of questions and talking points that we're going to throw at you, as we tend to do on our guest-based episodes.
Fire away.
So hopefully they're all okay. The spoiler warning this week, it's a fairly broad one. We've just put anything featuring Jane Slavin because we don't know what will come up. We've got our talking points, but anything could come up out of it. So we'll have that as a very broad spoiler warning. So we'll jump straight in if that's all okay.
It's all okay with me, yeah.
Marvellous. In that case, our first question is quite a broad one, I think. How and when did you start acting?
Well, my parents would say when I was born. They did start taking me to the theatre when I think they started when I was about 6, maybe even younger. And I used to have, my dad gave me a microphone and I would have 2 or 3 tape recorders and I would make little radio plays with just me doing all the voices. So I guess, and that was, I'd been in about the 2nd class at primary school. So yeah, about 6.
So it was very much a straight away thing then. It was always going to be acting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and my dad once said to me, he said, "You're an actress before you're a human." And at the time I thought that was a bit insulting. And more recently I think he's right. You know, it's kind of in your, it's just who you are. It's what you are. It's not, I don't try and be an actress. I just am. It's just, you know, the way I see things is slightly different. It's full of drama. Everything's full of colour or poetry or, you know, not in a good way or a bad way. Just that is just the way I am. And you know, the way he brought us up, the way they both brought us up, but it was my dad who took us to the theatre. We went to the theatre every week, and also we watched a lot of telly. You know, television wasn't like a bad thing in our house. It was, you know, cultural activity. So yeah, I just knew always. I don't remember not wanting to be an actress. And you know, with the microphone and everything, when I got my home studio, it just felt like I'm doing this job that I've wanted to do since I was 6 years old. I feel really, really lucky. Even if you're having the worst year ever and you're not earning much money, I'm still mucking around like I was when I was 6. So, yeah, I check myself regularly and think, "Ooh, this is what I wanted to do."
That's absolutely fantastic because we've talked to quite a few people who've fallen into it. Maybe a little bit later on. It wasn't necessarily the first thing they wanted to do,
Oh,
or
madness, madness. Because it's
um,
not the easiest job. So to fall into it, or for it to be, if you could do anything else, I would say do the other thing, because it's wounding not being able to do it. When you have periods of rejection or unemployment or whatever, it feels wounding. So yeah, I mean that's my advice to someone. If
yeah.
there is something else you could do, do it. You mad fools.
So a kind of question two kind of follows on a little bit from that then, which was what was
Mm.
your well, first of all, what was your first experience of Doctor Who, as like generally as a the big wonderful thing that it is, but then the second part of that would be sort of what was your first experience of acting in Doctor Who?
My first experience of Doctor Who was, I think it must have been the tail end of John. Um, I remember. I do remember his purple jacket and his ruffly shirt. But then I remember Tom. Tom was. Oh, I used to just look at him and think, oh, I want to marry him. Um, but obviously I was too young for that. Um, and then my first experience of acting in it was with John Pertwee in the 90s when I got a call from the BBC saying they were doing The Paradise of Death, starring John Pertwee and Elizabeth Sladen. And I thought, oh my God, that's the original deal, you know? So it was kind of exciting, but I didn't really grasp how big it was. Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't really grasp how big it was, because I remember, I knew John Pertwee and I knew Liz, but I actually knew Liz through Brian, her husband, because I'd worked with him a lot on the radio. So um, that was why she was more familiar, and also she had been companion to both of them, hadn't she? To Tom
Yes.
and John. I always get it mixed up. I can never remember who's companion to whom. But I remember going into the green room, and there was a guy there. Quite a few actors there, and there was a guy there, an older man. And I said, "Oh, hi, my name's Jane." And he said, "Oh, hello." And I said, "And who are you?" And one of the other actors said, "It's the fucking Brigadier." And it was Nick Courtney. So, but I didn't know who he was, but I was supposed that they were horrified that I would be so ignorant. It's the fucking Brigadier. That's who it was. So that gave him an importance after that forevermore.
Can imagine, yeah. Just I suppose that's it. It's had so many people involved with it over the years, and obviously that's a number that's just growing and growing and growing and growing. It must be impossible to keep track of all. I mean, I struggle to keep track of all of them, and I'm just a sort of a humble fan.
But I mean, it's the humble fans who know all this stuff. Generally, if you've not followed the show, or I don't know, 7 or something when Doctor Who was on, when I was watching Tom Baker. So how was I to know? But it was like, I realised it was like a kind of church then, and that we have to make it our job to know and to find these things out, because these people deserve real respect. They're adored,
Yeah, absolutely. Connor, do you want to go with the next one?
Yes, absolutely. So you'd already mentioned it a little there, but your first appearance, I've said appearance, but it's not a word that really applies when you're talking about audio. But your first Doctor Who role, I suppose, was the Paradise of Death, and you've already talked a little bit about it there. But could you tell us a little bit about your recollections of working on the Paradise of Death?
I mean, that's it, really. Also, I remember things that then came back to me years later when we started doing Big Finish, when I started joined the Big Finish family. Things like that we'd have photographs, and whoever was the doctor would have his, costume available, or Tom doesn't wear his costume, but he has a costume that he puts on for the photographs, and it's his shirt and his braces. And I remember John Pertwee had the coat. On like the third day of the job, he pulled his purple velvet coat out. It was amazing, and I thought, how has he still got that? Why would he still have it? But you forget again, because I wasn't privy to that whole Doctor Who world, that these things are precious and really important. So this was the first radio I'd ever done where we did photographs, and Liz was all dressed up, and John. I mean, I'd like to see some of them. I don't think I ever saw what came out, but yeah. So I remember that, and I remember that being really different, and then not thinking about it for years, and then doing Big Finish, and at the end of the lunch break, we all decamp to either the car park or somewhere and have our photographs taken. And I thought, oh yeah, it's a big thing. Oh, also, I remember I binned my script, as you do, and put it in the recycling bin at the BBC. And it was like in Kuala Lumpur when you're walking up the steps and all the monkeys jump on you if you've got a banana or something. I don't know, that's my memory of Kuala Lumpur. It felt like that, with actors going, "What are you doing?" and pulling my script out of the bin and saying, "We can sell that for charity," or "You can't throw a Doctor Who script away." But you know what? You have if you get hundreds of them, you have to throw them away.
I imagine that there are probably quite a few actors out there who have built up enormous script libraries over the years and
completely.
That sort of thing.
I mean, I went to the funeral of a very dear friend a few weeks ago, and her coffin was covered in just front pages. It was papered with front pages of scripts from the radio. And there must have been.
That's rather nice, actually.
It really was. It was incredibly moving, and her husband had a pile of the ones that were left over, and he said there are still about 500 left over.
I can only imagine that if you throw a Doctor Who script in the bin at the BBC these days, there's an army of fans waiting to jump into the bin after it.
Well, yeah. This is what happened. It wasn't fans. It was other actors, and I think I remember one of the actors a couple of years ago trying to sell one on eBay. So I was trying to work out. I think I can guess who it was, but I'm not going to share that with you. Yeah. So there are some scripts, and somebody somewhere has got my script with all my doodles and scribbles on, pulled out of the bin. Paradise of Death.
I've seen quite a few pop up for charity and that kind of thing, and yeah, it must be sort of a great thing to have. But at the same time, I can imagine that actors will have a lot of them, and writers as well, and all that sort of thing. They'll have all of these
my
copies
Big
that
Finish
they can
collection.
use.
The Big Finish collection just got too big. I mean, if I kept every script, I'd need an extra room in my house.
A Big Finish script room.
I know, and I have got one. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a massive Doctor Who fan. And I've given him a few scripts saying, "Do you want this one? It's the first Anne Kelso script," or I think I might have given him a Dalek Universe. Oh no, Dalek Universe they would have just been digital. But yeah, I gave my friend Tim quite a few scripts, and he was very happy to have them, which was great to get rid of them, really. You want them to go to a good home. You want them to go to someone who's going to go, oh, my God, this is proper and exciting, rather than be locked away in a cupboard somewhere.
Absolutely, and we've moved on then, as you say, to your time with Big Finish, your work with Big Finish. The range that you're probably most associated with there is the Fourth Doctor adventures, because you've been in very many of them, both in the recordings and I think reading in the studio as well. But what has it been like to work so extensively on the Fourth Doctor stories at Big Finish?
It's it's been apart from them being great fun, they are really good, great fun, those scripts. Working with Tom has been just such a, I don't want to say journey, because I hate that word when it's not an actual A to B journey. But it's been such a privilege, because he's so, when you meet your heroes and they turn out to be heroic and good and kind and funny, and that's what happened with Tom. And added to that, we just became friends. He's such a, he's like my family, I feel like he's a family member. And so I'd say I took that away. And also, meeting people like David Richardson, Nicholas Briggs, the writers, have so many of them, Dorney, that's all been, David Richardson's one of my best friends. Don't tell him I said that. I just adore him. I just feel enormously privileged to have been a part of it all. And I'm trying to work out when the last one that went out was, because obviously I can't tell you about anything that may happen ever. I hate that. This is one of the worst things about working for Big Finish, is you do something and then, I'm afraid it's not coming out till 2047, and you can't say anything about it until then. I mean, I exaggerate, but not by much.
I know. It's a case of hearing these things and thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to hearing that someday, eventually.
Oh my! I know. Or just not being allowed to talk about it. And when, like, for instance, when Anne Kelso was announced, I mean, it was, firstly I couldn't talk about it because of the twist. But also, I'd recorded it something like 3 years before, and they had asked me, "Can you not tell anyone?" I thought, "Oh my God, I would not tell. How can I not tell anyone in that time?" I was so desperate to tell people. I wanted to tell the world I'm going to be the companion. I'm going to be Tom's companion to the Fourth Doctor. How exciting is that? And I couldn't tell a soul.
It's definitely a running theme between people we've had on this podcast, actually. They've all said sort of something fairly similar, which is very strange. We've spoken to a few writers. We spoke to Jacqueline Rayner, and she said that she wrote something that was very sort of current and sort of tapped into things that were going on at the time, but by the time it was released, years had passed, and she kind of felt as though it wasn't sort of on the pulse as it had been when it was written.
Truly.
I can imagine it's a fairly similar experience with performance as well.
That was the one that got made as a Black Mirror. Jacqueline had written it before. It was done as a Black Mirror episode.
That was it.
It came out after, and then everyone was asking her, "Why did you just copy the Black Mirror thing?"
Oh, that's awful! Just awful. I found the easiest ones to write for were Survivors, because it was just a completely made up universe, but you could kind of, like, my first Survivors was set in the 70s, so it was never going to date. It was always going to be, set then, and then it was just an absolute work of imagination. There was nothing current or topical. It was all just what was in my head at the time.
So obviously, you played Anne Kelso. You were Tom Baker's brand new companion, and then Anne Kelso became Anya Kingdom.
She did.
And you've obviously done Dalek Universe and various other things as Anya. What would you say? How was it sort of different to play one to the other? How was playing Anne different to playing Anya? Sort of what changes did you make, as it were?
I'll tell you the first thing was I was introduced to my companion as Anne Kelso, and there was no suggestion even of Anya Kingdom. And as soon as I read the script and saw Anya, I was impressed and excited about the change, but I knew that it spelled the end for Anne. And I was devastated because I thought I wanted to be one of the companions like Liz or Leela that can just go on and on and on forever, and they seem to, and so I was devastated because it seemed to give Anne just the one season. So for a while, after I got the script, I was a bit annoyed with Dorney for writing this twist and for basically killing off Anne. Because I was so fond of her and because she was the companion that I thought I was going to be. And then actually, once I got to know Anya, she's better, I think. I don't know. I just feel like I betrayed Anne then by saying that. Yeah, no, I think eventually I realised as well that all the companions have, as the Doctors do, have a short time in our lives. So you can't just be doing it forever and ever and ever, much as we would like them all to do. And obviously people like Tom and Colin and do any of the others do it so constantly? Yeah, probably. I just wanted longevity. I wanted to be playing Anne for years and years and years. So the difference with Anya, and Anya's more, worldly wise, isn't she? And although I have to say, for about 6 months, I thought she was an alien. I didn't even realise. This is my comprehension of Doctor Who, is that sometimes I don't know whether I'm playing an alien or a human. And I'm thinking, well, how can they breathe otherwise? What are they doing on this weird planet? And then someone will say, we're actually on Earth, Jane, so it's fine. Oh, it's confusing.
It's interesting that you sort of say that you wish there was more Anne, because in last week's episode, we actually looked at the Syndicate Master Plan, and we went through it episode by episode, and one thing we sort of said was it would be absolutely great if at some point Big Finish kind of went back and
go back, tell them.
Further Adventures style box set, maybe set after the second, third episode, sort of earlier on, and we can just we can extend that out a little bit. So
yes,
suggest that.
I agree, and also
to David Richardson.
I'm a big fan of going back in time as well. So there are quite a few that I've read, not been in, but quite a few I've read with Tom, where we've visited, Victorian England or the 70s or something like that. And so I love those Let's Go Back in Time, and it'd be great for him to go back in time and meet Anne because he so loved her. So
yes, there should be more. There should definitely be more of Anne Kelso, and
but then don't they always,
in Big Finish land, that kind of thing can happen.
Exactly, it can. I mean, and also, they just erase your memory, don't they? So they fix it all by erasing you by the end. So yeah, it's perfectly possible. That would be great. See if we could get. We could get Tom to do it, but Anya's been companion to 10. So maybe, she could go on a 1970s jaunt with Christopher Eccleston. How cool would that
So
be?
we could just meet every Doctor.
Yeah.
That's a great
I'd love
idea.
that. I love Chris. I've loved working with him. He's great. He's very funny.
I think you've talked about companions that can go on and on and on. I think the thing, or one of the things I love most about companions like Anne, is that she's brand new to us as listeners. Like, we don't know what's going to happen to her, and that feels like the best way of recreating, what it's like to watch Doctor Who on TV.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
You're not
it's all
waiting for
brand
that
new.
terrible moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got the suspense of it all.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of gives Anne an edge and Anya an edge. That's why I enjoyed listening to those stories so much. So as you've mentioned there again, you've said Anya later did go on and travel with a later Doctor, with the 10th Doctor. What's it like to play the same companion with two different versions of the Doctor?
It's quite interesting because the way the Doctors are written, obviously they write them really cleverly for each Doctor. So David has 10 has a different way of being, doesn't he, from Tom's Doctor. But ultimately, the Doctor is the same person, obviously. What it boils down to is what it's like working with those two actors and how different they are. And Tom and David both have in common a real... they really care about it. They really... they're diligent. They both really prep their scripts, and they care deeply about this character. So those are the similarities. And Tom's very funny and indiscreet and loquacious, and David is good and kind and intensely private. Partly because of the different eras that they've been famous in that David has really been denied a private life, whereas Tom has always had way more privacy and was not a Doctor during the times of paparazzi and press invasion the way David was, because I think David's really been invaded by press, which makes him not guarded, just it's off the table. He's not going to be massively indiscreet like Tom would.
It's quite an interesting thought, really, that maybe playing the Doctor's brought probably an equal amount of fame, but a different type of fame, dependent on the time, I guess. And I suppose that's something that will always evolve.
Well, because I think Tom has had a kind of long-term worship, whereas David's had a long-term scrutiny. The way they scrutinise, they want to know everything about Georgia, they want to know everything about his kids, where he lives, and that's going to wear you down, isn't it? And not that you would know it, because he never seems worn down, but you just know that is why he's an intensely private individual.
He used to do a podcast where he'd sort of invite different people like Olivia Colman and Jodie Whittaker and people he had worked with and was friends with on, and he would interview them. But one of the questions he always asked was, what is your reaction to becoming public property? That was the phrase he used. How do you cope with becoming public property? Which is it's something you don't ever really think about, I suppose, from the outside. But it must be catastrophic to have your life upended in that way, I suppose.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, you've got to always be on, in a way. You can't have off days. You can't do anything naughty. You can't do anything wrong, because it's magnified 10,000 times. I'm not saying he would want to do anything wrong, but he really doesn't have the choice. I remember that podcast. I also think he's really an excellent interviewer. Who knew?
He was superb. That really stuck out. He was absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant. I loved those interviews. I would quite like to see some more, hear some more, actually.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
He asked some really interesting questions. I remember the one with Billy. It was really interesting about Billy because she's had such a fucked up adolescence with her. Sorry, am I allowed to say that? Oh, a messed up adolescence.
No, you're allowed to say it.
Okay, with the whole being a pop star and living on her own, age 14, and it's really interesting. Just some interesting chats he had, and he's still got that curiosity, hasn't he?
Yes, and that again stuck out, that he seems fascinated to be sitting talking to these people and learning about them as well. But I always loved that he had a really wide range of guests on as well.
Completely.
Like I did sometimes pick and choose, with people that I was familiar with and whatnot. But one that always stuck out in my head as one of the best was Stacey Abrams, who was the governor. I can't remember if she was the governor or the senator of Georgia. But he had her on for an interview.
Yes.
And she was brilliant. She was so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was amazing. And you thought, God, how does he know her? This is wonderful. Yeah.
So
amazing.
I would love to hear another series of that. Really, really would.
It's kind of raised a question, or maybe think of a question anyway, that's not on. I'm going off script. I do apologise.
Oh, he's going off piece.
I'm going off piece. But obviously, you in your profession, you obviously do meet many weird and wonderful people from all walks of life. Who's the most amazing person you've met?
Oh my goodness, what a question!
It was an off-script question, so it could go anywhere.
I'd have to have a think about that one and get back to you. So many. I really liked. God, I loved him. Michael Williams, Finty's dad, Judy's husband.
Ah, yes.
He was really wonderful in a very kind of humble way. Oh God, I don't know. There were so many. You meet, you meet one on every job that you think, oh God, I want you to be my friend. I adore you. I worked with, years and years ago, I worked with Faye Weldon. And she was pretty amazing. And we became friends, like, pretty much immediately. And then I would have dinner with her every week. And, she was a great champion. And so Faye, yeah, I would say Faye. And, when I had my daughter, she's called Mabel Faye Partridge. So she's named after Faye. So, yeah, Faye was pretty amazing. Just a brilliant, diamond sharp, very funny, twinkling brain, wonderful woman, just wonderful. Terribly, terribly sad when she died.
Oh, that was an excellent answer as well, actually. Yes, yeah, brilliant answer. So, Dalek Universe. It was a lockdown project.
It was, yeah.
Am I correct? Yes. So, just tell us about your experiences with lockdown recording.
I was quite excited. I was going to do it anyway, and I was going to buy the equipment just for me because I had some, but I didn't. It wasn't very good. It wasn't professional standard, but obviously I'd always had stuff I can record on. So I was going to do it anyway. And then I think before we'd even locked down properly, David Richardson called and said, have you got a microphone? And really, for Big Finish, it was a no-brainer for them to go remote and see if we could possibly do it, because they record all of us separately anyway in separate booths, and all the designers know how to deal with that. It's totally different on a radio play. So I got my equipment really early on. I had it way before we did our first recording, which was with Tom. And I think I was just reading in with initially on the very first one anyway. I think I was just reading in, and then we did loads, and it was a lifesaver for us. I think, I don't mean financially. It gave us a purpose, and it made us feel like we were still in the business. We were still valid. We were still creating, and they still do. Big Finish still do quite a lot remote now. I prefer personally to be in the studio, because I like to have a laugh in the green room, and when you're doing it remotely, you're literally just getting the work done, and that's no fun. I want to have big belly laughs with Chris Eccleston and Tom Baker in the green room. I mean, who wouldn't? Whereas you just can't, you just don't. Everyone gets on with it, when it's just in your ears. So that was my experience. It was quick and yeah, and I did lots of stuff for the BBC as well at the same time. Once I'd got the equipment set up, and I called Benji Clifford. I forgot his name, right? Haven't I? I love Benji. Anyway, I called Benji and said, what's the best microphone? I don't want to get just a USB thing. And got set up within like 24 hours.
It was. I had a fairly similar experience. I DJ every now and again. I sort of do just for fun. I used to do it as a job just for fun now. But when we went into lockdown, all of a sudden the DJing in bars and all that kind of thing on Friday nights, that just came to an end. It just stopped.
Of course, yeah.
And very quickly I thought, well, how can I carry on doing this? I'd stopped doing it and had kind of got back to it a few months before lockdown, so I was just getting back into the flow. So I kind of figured out, well, I can do live streaming, so figured out how to live stream, got the equipment that I needed, and 2 weeks into lockdown, I was doing these charity streams. We did
Wonderful.
a bit for Mind Manchester, and
it's really important though, isn't it? You realise how much you do it for your whole being, yourself, your soul. It's nothing to do with money or making a living. It is just that you need to do this. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It was very much. It was the only kind of creative output that I managed over lockdown. We talked about creative output over lockdown before we started recording, but it was sort of the one thing I managed to do was, at the very least, I can sort of do these video streams, and it was a real sort of it was something I was really glad I could do, because lockdown did stop us from doing so much.
Yeah, I'm feeling seen or heard, or that someone has benefited in some way, or none of us wanted to be just staring at four walls. There were lots of people who were on their own, like completely on their own. I had my daughter, thank God, but I think even more important to find a way of reaching out of those four walls and connecting.
And it's great that people did have these sort of lockdown projects, and it's great that things like Big Finish were able to continue. And I actually imagine that for certain people in the industry, it was probably a nice little lifeline.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for everyone, the writers, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
To give you a purpose. Yeah, we did tons actually. I remember doing the Dalek Universe over 3 weeks, and it was during a heat wave, and we were all just naked in our wardrobes, just sweating David Tennant under a duvet. With obviously we all had full houses as well with our families, but I mean, David's got about 18 children, so it was, it was interesting times.
When you think about it, it's amazing that he managed to get Dalek Universe done. It's a miracle that he managed to get Staged done.
You know what, though? He is an absolute workaholic, and he even though he's one of the busiest actors in the UK, he always seems to be, whenever I've done various things with him on the radio as well, just BBC, and he always seems to make himself available. He's like, rampantly voracious appetite for work.
And thankfully, Big Finish helped continue that through lockdown. And I think we're still getting David Tennant Big Finish content that was recorded at that time. That we probably would never have got otherwise.
I know, although he does, like I say, he just seems to, be filming something and he'll still make himself available to come and do a day's radio.
Which is just fantastic.
Yeah, he obviously just loves it. I mean, it's not the best paid job in the world, the radio. And you'd think at some point, I know lots of actors, especially when they get really big, just go, oh, you know what, can't be arsed doing that anymore. But he's not one of them.
Well, hopefully we'll get plenty more Big Finish and other radio stuff from him moving forward.
I think you will. And of course now we've all got the setup now, so even if it was inconvenient to go to a studio or something, you can always just pop upstairs and do what we're doing now and record something from home.
I think I remember reading an interview with Derek Jacobi talking about something. I think it was something he had done was going to be on TV. And he finished the interview and said, look, I'd love to chat some more, but I've got a little studio down in the shed at the bottom of my garden, and I'm going to go and do a Doctor Who now, so I'll have to go.
Brilliant.
But yeah, it's just good to hear that it was a great lifeline for a lot of people. It's really wonderful. Sort of good to hear that. We're going to turn the conversation into a slightly different direction now.
Are we now?
We are. Because you write as well. We've talked about acting. Let's talk about some writing. It's quite a broad question, this first one, but what kind of stuff inspires you?
It's hard to tell, really. I was commissioned recently to write a short story, and it's for a photography magazine called Hot Shoe, and I've done a story for them before. They asked me to do one a couple of years ago, and they send photographs or artwork by whoever's in the magazine that week, and it just triggers stuff. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And I would say the same, for instance, I'm writing something at the moment, which I can't tell you about. I'd have to kill you because it is for Big Finish. And I'm writing something, and I have to go anywhere but my house to get inspired, to get the plot points. I'm still at the outline stage of the second episode, and so I'll go out and I'll be doing all kinds of other things, and they'll just be triggers. The short story I wrote was called Trigger Warning, and it starts off trigger warning. Everything is a trigger, and it is. And so this might trigger a thought of that leads to something else, that leads to a plot point, that leads to a character, or so so I suppose, that's how it happens. But what do I like? What do I like writing about? What makes people tick? People's motives, people's mistakes. Mistakes are always much more fun to write about, and that terrible pickle you get in when you make a massive, massive mistake. Waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning going, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Those kind of things interest me. And also I'm a big fan of the fairy tale. But the dark side of the fairy tale, the Hans Christian Andersen kind of fairy tales. The Little Mermaid is not about Ariel, this gorgeous little girl mermaid. It's about a woman who is given the use of some legs but will always feel pain, and she's allowed to fall in love, but she has her tongue removed so she can never speak and she can never sing again. Those kind of fairy tales inspire me.
That's a nice broad range, actually, as well. That's
exactly.
An excellent set of stuff.
So one of our favourite things from Big Finish, and it's I remember listening to it shortly after it first came out, after I'd just moved back up into university. But we've done a few episodes as well, and we've talked about it a lot on here, and we've both sung its praises to the high heavens. But we'd be very interested to hear what it was like to work on Transference with Big Finish, because it's very different from their usual sort of output. We always say it's Big Finish taking on a great big Sunday night ITV drama, and doing it really, really well. So would love to hear what it was like writing and working on that.
You know what? It was fantastic, and I was a bit scared when David said, "Oh, I want you to write a thriller," and there are going to be I think there were 4 of us, and I thought, thriller? Oh, that's not really my genre. But actually, they put the 4 of us together, and we had a kind of writer's room. Not very often. I think we met maybe 3 or 4 times. But we put our weird and twisted brains together, and we're all so different, and we're all slightly neurodiverse. And the combination of all our brains firing in completely different directions from the other was actually perfect for plotting a series. So it was exciting, and I have missed that process of having really odd brains working alongside mine, because it really does kick things off. That we've all got our own algorithms, haven't we? The things we follow, the things we love, our habits, but then you put 4 really different people in a room together, and suddenly you've got this fabulous cornucopia of ideas. Great. It was great. I loved it. I was also really relieved that I got the first 2 episodes, so I could set everything up and not have to bother about the loose ends. I left those to Dorney.
That's quite interesting. I don't know if it was sort of out there knowledge that you'd written the first 2, but it sort of credited on the release. It's just the 4 of you. It doesn't say who did which episode, that kind of thing. So was that the case with all of it? Sort of everyone did 2 episodes?
Oh, yeah. I think Dorney did the last 2. I did the first 2. And I don't know what the order of the other 4 were. The other two guys. I just know that they're all really, just great writers and all. We've all got really quite different voices, which obviously you don't have to suppress it, but you have to be part of a whole rather than just your voice.
Yeah.
Although it was quite nice, I felt like I had a bit of control Alex's voice, for instance, because I got to create her character. So I was very happy with that. Yeah, I loved Transference.
And it really does feel like this fantastic, coherent, as Connor said, sort of ITV Sunday night thriller, and it does have this incredible continuity. It is sort of very tightly plotted, tightly written, and I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall for those sort of writers' rooms chats, because it really does just have this amazing sort of coherence. So to hear that actually it was broken up like that, almost sort of into quarters, it's somewhat surprising. I'd have guessed that sort of each writer was scattered throughout the series, as opposed to you were 1 and 2 and Dorney was 7 and 8 and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful release, and we'd love to sort of hear more of that kind of thing from Big Finish as well, because it really was taking on something different, and it is something that I'd absolutely love going back to. And it's one of those things that you kind of pick out extra little bits as you go through it again as well, sort of knowing where it goes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an absolutely brilliant release.
Watch this space.
Ooh.
I'm saying nothing.
We won't push any further. Because you'll just tell us to go away anyway.
I'd be so like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you. No,
yeah.
Can't tell you.
You get a knock on the door in the morning from David Richardson. What have you been saying?
No. I know. I was working with an actor, and he'd been doing some Disney thing, or it was a big thing anyway, Warner Brothers or Disney or something, and they'd all been told they'd signed NDAs. They had, you're not allowed to talk about this on social media, you're not allowed to post anything, you're not allowed to do this, this and this. And he had posted literally a selfie of him in the green room, that was it, with no clues as to where he was or what he was doing, and he was fired an hour after it went out onto social media.
Bloody hell.
I know.
Brutal.
I know. And you think, God, it can't even be. I mean, I did a game. I did a game last year called Baldur's Gate, or I can't remember how to pronounce it. Anyway, but we weren't even allowed to know during it what we were working on. So I couldn't have spoiled it for anyone, even if I'd tried, because I didn't know what I was working on. It was just called Project something or other. We weren't allowed to share anything, and then eventually they said, "Oh, we're releasing it. It's gonna come out on the 5th or whatever, and you can share it now on social media." And I thought, share what? I don't even know. Can't remember what I played. It was so shrouded in secrecy.
And it's turned out to be one of the most highly reviewed games of this year, I believe.
Absolutely. It was one of my favourite jobs ever, though, because we got to wear the suits, with the bubbles on and skipping around, moving in a dramatic fashion, like basically a character in a game. It was fantastic. I loved it.
I've actually just started playing it last night, and
I
had no idea you were in it, and I'm really looking forward to just listening out to hear where you are now.
I need to get hold of it now to see if I can spot you.
I play a few characters.
Oh, brilliant. That's even better. There's more of a challenge. I did spot Glenn McCready's voice, and I was listening to it thinking, that voice is familiar. That's the guy from Big Finish. So I was aware that I had to listen out for more, and I'm excited now to hear where you turn up in it.
Excellent. Well, you better tell me as well how good it is. I bet it looks amazing.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was excited to get playing because I just started playing with a group of friends. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons about a year ago, and it's all the same universe. So it's very exciting to get to play it in video game form now as well.
Yeah.
Well, we have one more question for you, and then
it
we'll
better
let
be a
you
good
go.
one.
I hope it's a good one. It's another Big Finish question. Are there any Big Finish ranges or ongoing projects that you've not worked on that you'd like to?
Do you know? I'm one of I'm one of those actresses. I My ears prick up when I see that somebody's doing something, and I think, why wasn't I in that? Even if it's an all male version of Treasure Island or something, I think I should have been in it. Why wasn't I in it? And especially Big Finish, I want to be in everything, and I know I can't. I know that would be overkill. But I think change my name, disguise my voice. I'll just do them just for the fun. Other ranges. No, I think my favourite non-Doctor Who was Survivors, and I've been in that a couple of times, and I've written it as well. So that would have been the one. But yeah, I'm up for any of them. I mean, they're all such fun, aren't they?
They're certainly a lot of fun to listen to.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Jamie Anderson, who does the Thunderbirds and stuff. But I don't. Do they do them via Big Finish? I know they did because he was at a Big Finish day. That's how I met him originally.
That's Connor territory.
I think they record them at or with Big Finish, but it's all put out under Anderson Entertainment. I don't think Big Finish get any sort of credit or anything like that. It's all sold on their site though.
I see, and the worlds collide often because Jamie's everybody's friend. He's just the funniest, most gorgeous human being. So everybody wants to be his friend. And I met him at a Big Finish day, and I didn't know who he was or what his involvement was, and he a bit like the Brigadier, fucking Brigadier. He didn't enlighten me, didn't say, oh, this is who I am. And I said, why is everyone interested in your dad? Because people would be coming up to him saying, oh, I loved your father. Oh, what a wonderful man he was, and blah, blah, So that was quite... So I suppose, I'd quite like to do some Thunderbird kind of thing. But for the actual Big Finish... You know what? The Big Finish originals. So if they do a Transference 2, count me in.
But that definitely wasn't you hinting that there's going to be a Transference 2.
I couldn't possibly tell you.
Oh. I really want there to be a Transference 2.
Well, also, the Big Finish originals. Oh, Attagirl as well. I mean, have you heard Attagirl? They're amazing.
Yes.
What was I going to say? Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, the originals and also some of the other spin-offs come out a lot more quickly than bloody Fourth Doctor Adventures, scheduled for release in, the 23rd century. Because the only one I know that came out really quickly after we'd recorded it that was a Doctor Who story was Dalek Universe, because that was out within a year, wasn't it?
But obviously done under kind of exceptional circumstances.
Absolutely. But that was one of those things that the scripts were written quite quickly for that, and they're so sharp you absolutely wouldn't know there was anything odd about the whole process.
I was re-listening to it fairly recently and was sort of trying to listen to it with that in mind. And no, you genuinely can't tell that they were written quickly, that kind of thing. It feels
I know.
sort
and
of
it's
very solid.
It's so moving, isn't it? It's so moving. I remember just sitting there at the end of a day going, oh my God, that was so powerful. It was wonderful, really wonderful scripts.
And it was tying up some 50-odd year old plot threads from William Hartnell's era as well. And it was just amazing how it managed to draw out all of that from stuff that was supposedly wrapped up so long ago.
I'm in awe of that kind of script skill, continuity. I don't know how they do it.
It's that John Dorney, isn't it? We've had
It's
him on
bloody
this
Dorney, isn't
podcast before, and we ran out of time with him.
Of course you did. Of course
we had
you
about
did.
7 million
There'd
other
been
questions.
no space. Yeah, no, he's an encyclopedia of Doctor Who.
And a really, 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 really good Doctor Who writer.
Yeah, really brilliant.
Well, we've kept you chatting for more than an hour, so I suppose we'd probably better,
Oh my God,
better
has
let
it
you
been
go.
so long?
It's been an hour and
Wow.
5 minutes, according to my clock here. And now I've said that, there's
Wow.
bits going to be cut out, and that's going to be a couple of minutes out on the final episode. But never mind.
You know, I think put those outtakes in. I want to hear that I've wheezed in a measuring jug. I want the headline to be Jane Slavin wheezed in measuring jug during lockdown.
Well, I might have to change the title of the episode to It's the Fucking Brigadier.
It's the fucking Brigadier. I think you should.
And
You
considering
absolutely should.
We're generally a non-sweary podcast, but we do put a little sweary warning on when we have guests.
but
And that's
you've-
fine. That's allowed.
You've got to have a bit of effing and jeffing when it's the Brigadier.
Well, obviously,
It's-
yes.
It's the fucking Brigadier. Oh my God. So that's important then. Yeah.
And that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining, Jane. It's been absolutely fantastic.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
We love having guests on this podcast. We don't do it too often, but when we do, you're all absolutely amazing. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for such an interesting chat.
It really has been great to chat, actually, and we always love getting these sort of insights into not just Big Finish life, but acting life, writing life, and it's the sort of stuff we love to share with our listeners. So yeah, it means an awful lot.
I've had a great time, and it's lovely to meet you both.
Oh, excellent! Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
So I will say thank you and goodbye to Connor. Thank you for joining me as ever for another amazing guest episode.
Thank you very much. It's been a blast.
And a huge, huge thank you and goodbye to Jane Slavin.
Thank you.
And we shall be back for more spodcasting very soon. Goodbye now.
It's the fucking Brigadier.